Order.
The draft Contracts for Difference, Electricity Supplier Obligations, Amendment Regulations 2024.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship as always. I beg to move that the Contracts for Difference Electricity Supplier Obligations Amendment Regulations 2024, which were laid in draft before this House on the 30th of July 2024, be approved. This instrument forms an important part of the Government's commitment to accelerate deployment of carbon capture, usage and storage, or CCUS as we call it. CCUS is critical to deliver clean energy and accelerate our net zero journey. As the Government recently announced, CCUS is vital as we enter into a new era of clean energy investment and jobs. By boosting this tried and tested technology, the UK has the potential to become a global leader in CCUS, delivering good jobs and economic growth for decades to come. A critical element of the CCUS mix is the successful deployment of power CCUS, and that is gas-powered electricity generators fitted with carbon capture technology. It's not quite like that, as I'm indicating. It's a bit more complicated, but that's the gist. Power CCUS will complement the rollout of renewable energy, providing secure, flexible, non-weather dependent, low-carbon electricity, critical for a reliable energy system and for achieving our mission of clean power by 2030. The Government is committed to incentivising the deployment of power CCUS, and this statutory instrument will enable future payments to power CCUS plants under a business model called the Dispatchable Power Agreement. The Dispatchable Power Agreement, or DPA, as we like to shorten it to, is the contract framework to support power CCUS. It has been designed specially to incentivise the investment and deployment of power CCUS in the UK. Dispatchable power agreements are a type of contracts for difference, and like those contracts for difference, uses the electricity supply obligation to fund support payments. This levy is calculated and managed by the CFD counterparty, which is called the Low Carbon Contracts Company, and collected from electricity suppliers like Octopus or British Gas, who are able to pass the costs on to their customers if they choose to do so. In addition to the existing renewable CFD contract design, the DPA business model will provide an alternative payment based on a power CCUS generator's availability. This availability payment is based on a generator's availability of electricity generation and carbon capture and associated carbon dioxide transport and storage network costs. Under the DPA terms, payments will reduce proportionately to reflect any reduction in a generator's availability of CO2 capture, its capture rate or generation. The payment is made whether a generator dispatches power or not. This ensures a CCUS power plant will run in response to market signals ahead of unabated gas plants, but not surpassing cheaper renewables. This arrangement will strengthen our security of supply, ensure a source of reliable, low-carbon energy is available, but only when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Let me be clear, this proposed instrument only enables the ability for certain types of payments under the renewable CFD and DPA contracts to be funded by the supplier levy. Any future support offer to a project will be subject to rigorous negotiations with partners. Any decisions to award support will be subject to value for money and subsidy control tests to ensure best value for money for consumers. This statutory instrument amends the 2014 Contracts for Difference Electricity Supply Obligations regulations. The amendments will allow the payments made under the DPA to be funded by the supplier levy by changing how the supplier levy rate calculation works in the regulations. Firstly, Regulation 4 relates to the way an electricity supplier's daily contributions paid to the CFD counterparty is calculated. This instrument amends Regulation 4 to enable the definition of generation payments so that the supplier obligation can be charged for payments related to the activities of a dispatchable power plant fitted with CCUS technology. I hope everybody's still with me. This includes amendments to take into account the electricity generation capacity made available by a generating station on a given day, a generating station's achieved carbon dioxide capture rate or capture capacity on a given day, the incurred CO2 transport and storage capital costs incurred for transporting such captured carbon dioxide, and if required, associated carbon dioxide transport and storage network revenue shortfalls proportionate to a DPA supporting generating station, which arose on that day. Secondly, Regulation 7 of the 2014 regulations sets out how the CFD counterparty estimates the quarterly obligation payment that electricity suppliers will be required to provide to the counterparty. This instrument amends Regulation 7 to ensure a consideration of matters related to a dispatchable power agreement supported generating station are taken into account, including the carbon dioxide transport and storage network capital costs and, if required, revenue shortfalls and the amount of carbon captured. Together, these amendments allow a CFD counterparty to estimate, raise funds and ultimately pay a DPA-supported CCUS-enabled power plant. The existing payment calculation based on the amount of electricity generated by renewable CFD-supported generating stations is retained and unaffected. In summary, this instrument represents a positive step forward in the delivery of the government's ambitious CCUS programme and 2030 Clean Power mission. It will lay the regulatory groundwork to encourage the deployment of power CCUS and begin to unlock the great economic and jobs opportunities. I commend this regulation to the House.
Hear, hear, hear.
The question is, the committee has considered the draft Contracts for Difference Electricity Supplier Obligations Amendment Regulations 2024. I now call the opposition spokesman, Mark Garnier, to give a brief speech.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Lee, and you'll be delighted to hear that I don't intend to keep this committee for very long. Thank you very much. I'm going to be popular. Can I first of all start off by thanking the Minister for her introduction? It is quite a technical issue, this, and she's done very well in introducing it. And I'm delighted that on both occasions that we've been getting together in this committee, it is terrific from our point of view to see that the new government is carrying on the hard work that's been done by the previous government and indeed endorsing all of our good policies. Carbon capture and storage is an exciting technology, and it was the announcement in the budget last year by the former Chancellor, my right honourable friend, the member for Godalming and Ash, to deliver 20 billion in investment that has led us here. I think it is just worth mentioning that this is reinforced in the explanatory memorandum on paragraph 5.4, where it does say HMT budget 2023 confirmed government's intention to make up to 20 billion available to support the early deployment of CCUS. I think it's just worth mentioning that during the statement, whenever it was recently, the Secretary of State did say that this hadn't been allocated, and I think it would be very helpful if the Minister could just confirm the government's position on this. All the evidence does seem to suggest that it was allocated, and so the Secretary of State may have misled the House when he said it hadn't been. But much work has gone to get all this moving forward on making carbon capture and storage a reality, and I thank the huge amount of work done by officials to get these technical regulations over the line. As the new government is agreeing to continue to support carbon capture and storage, we hope that means we'll hear more on the Track 2 clusters, Acorn and Viking. These were due to make progress over the summer. Again, I think we asked during the statement if we could have a progress report on this, and I think it would be very helpful if we could have a progress report on how the Track 2 clusters are moving along. I'm going to leave it at that, Mr. Lee. We are on this side of the House are very happy to support the policies that we brought forward, and we're delighted that the new government is so enthusiastic to do likewise. So thank you very much.
Minister, do you want to come back?
I'll come back briefly. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points to make. Obviously, the first CCUS commitment was made, I think, in 2009, was then cancelled in 2010, was then set up again some point in the mid-2000s, cancelled again. What I think the Shadow Minister was referring to in the explanatory notes is, and I think the wording there is intention. I think the intention was announced, but whether the actual funding behind it was available is a different point, and I think that's where we would disagree. So I would very strongly say that the Secretary of State certainly did not mislead the House, and I'm glad to clear that up. In terms of Track 2, we are working at pace to get these things done. The costs of carbon capture are, significant, as the Shadow Minister will know, and we need to make sure we're spending money in exactly the right way and being as careful as we can with what is public money. But we are working with both those, indeed Track 1 expansion in the existing Track 1 allocations and Track 2, and trying to get to a point where the cost of carbon capture comes down, where we have a market and it becomes a self-sustaining market over time, but that will take some time. So I would like to thank the opposition spokesperson for his comments and for honourable friends and members for being here, and the instrument before us today will incentivise the deployment of Power CCUS and make a significant contribution to our CCUS programme and 2030 Clean Power mission, and I commend these draft regulations to the House.
Sorry, I should have asked the Liberal spokesman. She was just saying, you're happy? Good. Nobody else. Everybody happy? No, that's what we like to be. The question is that the committee has considered the draft Contracts for Difference Electricity Supplier Obligations Amendment Regulations 2024. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order. Thank you very much.